I think Lost is an interesting television show because it talks a lot about some of the universal themes that have faced humanity since at least 4,000 or 5,000 years ago.
Well, look at the name. They're lost. They're seeking something, and from an Eastern religious standpoint, they are seeking this special knowledge, which will, in a sense, save them finally, or prepare them to help others find their way. The Dharma Initiative logo is a mandala. Mandalas are visual aids for meditation. And what mandalas do is bring you in from the outer rims, which is certain knowledge that you may have, and meditating on it, you can go further toward the center. In the center is that knowledge which is necessary to know the sacred, to know how to live one's life and how to escape the human condition. Dharma literally means religious law. Dharma with a capital D is the teachings of the Buddha. If you follow Dharma,
I'm not lost anymore,
and perform actions that release you, there's hope. Not redemption, but there's hope for release.
How did you do that?
same way anything lost gets found. I stopped looking.
Those things had to happen to me. That was my destiny.
One of the important themes in Lost is fate versus free will.
But destiny, John, is a fickle bitch.
The idea of destiny versus the individual constructing their own journey.
You know, I was supposed to be flying it. Oceanic 815. Imagine how different my life would be had that alarm gone off.
How different would it have been? The island still got you in the end.
In ancient Greek and Roman mythology, the fates were depicted as three sisters spinning the thread of people's lives. One of the fates would measure out the thread. One would spin the thread, and the third sister would snip the thread at the end of your life.
They are spinning as we're living. It's a very interesting idea of not quite knowing what your fate or your destiny will be, and even they are spinning in a somewhat random manner.
In Lost, we see the image of Jacob weaving. He's taking these threads and he's weaving them together, just as he's touching different people, connecting them to the island.
Be good, Katie.
So that's Greek mythology. In Christianity in general, it's believed that God gives us free will. But there's still a tension between God's plan and our individual motives and desires and decisions.
I think of someone like St. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century who says God creates both by necessity and by contingency. There are certain things that God knows are going to come to a successful end and certain things that God's going to leave open to happen. And that's part of what it means to be God. It's the how much God is involved along the way that you have lots of debate among Christians. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on in the sense of, do I understand God correctly or not?
You have to understand, everything I did for the island. Now, I'm asking you to
I think you see that with John and Ben in particular. Do they understand what Jacob's saying? Do they understand what some of the other characters are saying?
Are you Jacob?
No, but I can speak on his behalf.
It's perfect. I'll take it.
It seems that in Lost, there is an overarching scheme.
No, you won't.
I don't understand.
This is wrong. You don't buy the ring. You have second thoughts. You walk right out that door. So come on, let's have it.
Just like Eloise Hawking says, there's course correction.
You don't do it because you choose to, Desmond. You do it because you're supposed to.
And if you're supposed to go from point A to point B, you will. You'll end up at point B, but you can make decisions along the way.
I've tried, brother. I've tried twice to save you, but the universe has a way of course correcting it, and I can't stop it forever.
It seems like through the characters of Desmond and Charlie, you get this interplay in particular of the role of chance and the role of design or providence in a sense, and how those two ideas are sort of conflicted or perhaps work together in bringing about the events of the island.
Sometimes you need a little push. Sometimes you need a push in the right direction by fate.
Machine got stuck. I guess it just needed a little push.
So we see Jacob as kind of the god of fate. He's always pushing them in the right direction.
Well, next time, how about you tell me everything up front? I'm not big on secret plans, okay?
If there is this scheme, you know, if there's a purpose for everybody on the island, then where does it come from? What kind of intentions does it have?
I've done everything you wanted me to do, so why did you do this?
If there is a God and there is something else, an accuser or Satan-like figure who is tempting us or is trying to get us to leave a sort of fulfilled path or a meaningful path, are we sort of being played at some level by someone that we don't even know and someone that we can't even control?
These people, they're just using us. They're playing some kind of game and we are just the pieces.
What's fascinating about Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism, the plan is this: escape the human condition. But there's no great divine cosmic plan in the same sense that we have in the Western traditions. What happens is the self, not the soul, but the self within us, moves from life to life, and it takes with it its knowledge.
We have a very specific process for selecting our leadership, and it starts at a very, very young age.
In Buddhism, when a Dalai Lama has died, they will seek out a child that may have this self reborn in them.
I'm Richard Chan. I run a school for kids who are extremely special.
And one of the tests is to lay out the begging bowls and the beads and those accoutrements that the Lama had to see if the child will pick them. If the child chooses correctly, there's a good chance that within them is this innate knowledge that has been passed down through generations. And they go on to become the next Lama. And just because they pick out the correct stuff doesn't always mean that they are the one. They then are subjected to very rigorous training. In the whole idea of Lost, one could look at all the seasons as an initiation process, that it was necessary to go through all these different ordeals in order to be initiated into a group that might be called the special ones.
You're candidates to replace Jacob. There are only 6 left.
You go through all of these ordeals to come out the other end wise and a part of a special group. It'll be very interesting to see who the true chosen ones were.
That, James, is why you're all here.
For me, one of the most compelling parts of the show Lost is that the writers don't come to glib or flippant answers about any of the important questions that they ask. The questions of what is redemption, the questions of what is the meaning of life, the questions of whether my life has purpose and whether that calls me to courageous and brave things.
But I thought I was special.
Well, everyone makes mistakes.
And so at some level, I find that's why the show is so captivating. We have to make up some decisions for ourselves, and we're going to be left with ambiguity.
I have little doubt that God has different plans than you being a monk, Desmond. Bigger plans.
Oh, aye, sure he does.
He does.
But it's perhaps in those ambiguous moments that we really see what it means to be human and realize that the limitations of what it means to be human means that we don't have all the answers, and we're never going to have all the answers. And while that is completely frustrating at times, it just is what it is to be human.
What am I supposed to do now?
Whatever comes next.